Fiero. She's a partner with the firm Tim Rice, Estate and Elder Law, and she thoroughly enjoys her job. And you're going to see that, you know, she has a great, compassionate personality. She provides a full range of estate and elder law services for her clients and especially their loved ones. Yeah. In conjunction with her team at TREEL, she navigates effectively often difficult and tough emotional topics that are, you know, that are involved in the legal landscape. She dedicates herself to learning about each of her clients, which you have to do, and their special, unique needs, and she formulates a personalized solution for them. So, you know, it's a very tough subject sometimes, and there's so much to it. So I'm very happy to have you here, Kim.
Thank you, Joanne.
Welcome.
Thank
I've
you.
been trying for years now, I mean, but I finally succeeded.
You've said so many wonderful things about her. Is she going to be able to stay in the studio?
I don't.
So as my head continues to get big, let's focus on Kim.
No pressure.
Right, I mentioned two words, estate planning and elder law. What are the differences and how do they complement each other with what you do?
So I think that when we talk about estate planning, that really applies to anyone. Mm-hmm. If you have assets, if you have a family, even if you're a single person that has assets, it's important to have an estate plan and understand really what estate planning means. And usually we're talking about having those basic important documents such as a will, a power of attorney, medical directive, and maybe in some instances a trust. Mm-hmm. So that really applies to anyone. Now when we talk about elder law, we are talking about focusing in on certain issues that affect our senior population and, you know, trying to prepare them for what comes ahead financially, medically, and possibly whether or not they want to age in place, which is remaining in the home and the costs that are incurred with that, or are we talking about maybe transitioning at some point to a assisted living or another type of long-term care facility. So at some point, the road is going to meet, right? Because we all start off at a certain age and a certain place in our life, and as our lives change and things progress, then certain legal aspects to our life and certain financial aspects have to change and grow as we do. So it's really just starting at one point on the road and ending up at another point down the road and working with someone like myself and Mr. Rice in order to kind of figure out what lies ahead.
So in your experience, you've probably seen a lot of things that get overlooked, and having an expert, and Joanne and I are always professing, use a professional for things. Don't try to just go on Google and print a will or do something like that. If you can use a professional, you get what you pay for, right? So what are some of the things most overlooked that you see when it comes to elder care or this type of law?
Can I say though, every time I see those do-it-yourself wills, my stomach hurts every time I see that, because it seems simple. It seems like an easy thing to do, to just print out a will off the internet and you think that you're fine. But what you're not getting is the benefit of the legal advice. And we spend a lot of time getting to know our clients and understanding their family dynamics, their financial dynamics, because all of that really goes into our recommendations for the proper estate plan. So without the benefit of educating yourself, getting that legal advice and legal information from an attorney, there's a lot of things that you can overlook. If you print one of those wills off the internet and it doesn't conform with the law, or something as simple as failing to name a successor executor, for an example. And what happens if your executor passes away? Now you have no one named. You might have to go to court to get someone appointed, which is going to add expense and time during the probate process. And so simple little things that can be overlooked can cause a lot of extra time and money for your loved ones, and can have a real impact on your estate in the future. So really just getting that legal advice and really having the knowledge and understanding is important.
Would you say that you run into more cases where people don't even have a will?
We do see quite a number of individuals who don't have wills or have very old, outdated wills. And so much changes in your life over the years that it's important to try to keep those updated. Once you have it, it's sort of not a one and done.
Okay.
We usually recommend taking a look at those documents every 5 to 7 years.
I see.
Or if there is a change, a major life change, a death, a divorce, something of that nature where you might need to update those documents. It's very important.
Yeah, I think we've all heard the mantra, you get what you pay for. So you can't take shortcomings in this area. Martin and I have been in this situation too with elder care with our parents.
Yeah.
So what are some of the complexities surrounding elder care laws?
I think that we always have to know our client, right? Because every person is different, their family dynamics are different, their financial situation is different, and so I can meet with Jane Smith on Tuesday and John Doe on Wednesday, who are maybe the same age but are in completely different places in their lives. They might have completely different family structures, financial structures, health concerns, and so that's where kind of bringing it back to getting to know your client to give them the best quality services. So when you have someone who might have an illness or disability that may require long-term care, we might have to discuss with that client the potential for Medicaid down the road and asset protection, and that spills into possibly revamping those estate planning documents and looking at it from a holistic perspective. We might have to have a conversation with that individual about guardianships or conservatorships. So we really just have to analyze our client and kind of cover all of those bases and make the best recommendations for them.
It's so interesting you say that, like know your customer, know the person you're dealing with, because when Joanne and I sit down with somebody, the first things we want to know is your age, your marital status, your risk tolerance, your health. You know, why am I going to put together a 10-year plan if you're not going to make it for 10 years because you have terminal cancer? You know, so these things are all important. But switching, you mentioned Medicaid, you know, and planning that might come in from Medicaid. What are some of the considerations you have for that? Because that's tricky when people's assets kind of, you know, run out.
Medicaid is very tricky, it's very complex, and it's probably one of the hottest topics where people have misinformation. I think a lot of people get information through the grapevine or off the internet, but the laws are state specific and things can change from state to state, and everyone's individual situation is different. So if you're married, there are different rules that apply. If you have one spouse applying for Medicaid and one remaining in the home. It's different if you have a single individual. Maybe they were never married or widowed, or they're a widower.
So hold that thought, because we have to pay some bills and go to some commercials. We're going to be right back with Kim. Welcome back to It's Your Money with Joanne and Martin. We're here with Kim Fiero of Timothy Rice Estate and Elder Law. And Kim has been really great at sharing with our viewers a lot of interesting points about elder care and law. So let's continue on with our discussion. When we left, we were talking about Medicaid, and the challenges of Medicaid. So why don't you continue with that?
Yeah. So planning is really important because Medicaid is sort of a program of last resort, right? It's a federal and state run program where you're essentially getting the government to pay for your long-term care costs. So their position is, well, why should we pay if you have assets, right? So there's a theory that you're expected to use your assets to pay for your own care until such time as you qualify for this program. However, there are planning techniques and what we call asset protection planning that we can discuss with our clients to try to preserve some of those assets for their family. So upon their death, their family would actually have something. So it has to be done in a very particular way, because we have to always make sure that whatever we do does not interfere with their potential for becoming eligible for the program down the road. And we also have to make sure that, as much as I have clients that are concerned about their family and would love to leave something to them, I also cannot leave my client without money to live on. And unfortunately, there are just some clients who may not have enough assets to be able to do that asset protection component, because they rely on whatever they have to maintain their lifestyle until such time as they might be eligible for the program.
You know, I'm sorry, Joanne, I was going to say that I think Medicaid is really an important program, because let's face it, if you have to spend time in an assisted living or a nursing home, how much is it, a year or a month? It doesn't take very long to zap all of your assets. But the fact that you'd be able to stay in a place, get care and meals, you know, that is a really good program when you think about it.
I think most of us are familiar with Medicaid in the terms of the 5-year look-back period, but maybe our audience isn't. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah.
Sure. So the 5-year look back basically refers to when we have an applicant who we believe that they're eligible for the program and we submit an application. Part of that application process is submitting a laundry list of documentation this all gets filed with your local County Board of Social Services office. So in addition to the application, you're submitting a laundry list of documents, and with that, they want to see 5 years worth of all your financial information. So bank accounts, investment accounts, anything that was opened and closed within that 5-year period, you have to submit. And so what are they looking for? Well, they're looking for individuals who might be giving away assets in order to become eligible for the program.
Right.
So that is not permitted, right? You can't give all of your money to your adult children and then turn around and say, okay, state and federal government, now you have to pay for my long-term care. So as long as the planning sort of comes in place, that if we get our client early enough, then we can work with them to possibly preserve assets, but it has to be outside of that 5-year look back. Yeah. Otherwise, any of those transactions would be seen and could potentially interfere with their eligibility.
And they want 5 years times 12. They don't want a consolidated summary of one statement.
Want monthly statements.
Yes.
Yeah, that shows a year. They will not accept an annual statement
Correct.
that has, they want each month.
And you know what? I'm glad they're
That's
diligent
60
like that. You know, I mean, listen, there's a lot of people who try to, play the system, and that's not right, for those that really need it. Right. So, you know, special needs trusts, we hear the word trusts, and I know our viewers, have probably heard this, in passing, because there's a lot of different kinds. Can you talk to our viewers and tell our viewers about what those are, special needs trusts?
Sure. So there are many different types of trusts, and when we're recommending a trust to a client, we really have to make sure that we're accomplishing the goals of the particular client. So, for example, you might recommend a trust for tax planning. You might recommend a trust if you have, say, an adult child that maybe has a drug or alcohol problem, and your client has concerns that if their adult child received an inheritance that they might squander it. Yeah. So they might want to put that inheritance in trust.
Is that called a spendthrift?
It is called a spendthrift trust, correct.
Proud of you.
And we even have pet trusts. If people want to leave money, you can appoint a trustee and a caregiver for your animals.
Listen, my wife would leave a trust for the dogs versus me.
So when we're talking about special needs trust and special needs planning, that's a very particular type of planning when you might have a client that has an adult disabled beneficiary or a child with disabilities. And we have our clients say to us all the time, my daughter is receiving Social Security benefits and Medicaid, and so she can't get an inheritance because then she'll be ineligible for benefits. Special needs trust and special needs planning still allows you to leave something to a disabled beneficiary while allowing them to retain those benefits. So it's a very important tool that we have to care for the loved ones of our clients that with special needs.
There's many people throughout New Jersey, because I've heard this, that have autism and things like that. And so now what happens if both parents should pass away? That's where a special needs trust could be applicable to make sure there's assets there for the care of this daughter or son that has issues like this.
Correct. So there are two different ways that we can sort of attack this legal issue. Advising clients to make those provisions in their will and creating the trust during their lifetime, so that way upon their death any assets would then transfer to the trust, so you're preserving those benefits. But you also have adults with disabilities that may find themselves coming into money, and now they're concerned about losing their benefits. They can establish their own special needs trust under certain circumstances. That way they can still have the benefit of that money, but it's being managed in a trust by a trustee. The trust has to comply with state law, and it has to be managed in a certain way, and it has to be funded prior to their 65th birthday. And it has to be used just for the sole benefit of the disabled beneficiary. So there are rules. They have to be managed in a particular way, but they're a very important tool.
So, for our viewers, you just heard a lot of great information, and some of this may be applicable, for your family. So if you need something like this, you really need to reach out to Kim and her firm, because that's their specialty. If you want real estate, maybe that's not her thing, but if you need something like this, it sure is.
I mean, let's try to help our viewers figure out what are the 3 things they should do to avoid having a legal mess for their loved ones. Like, what's your recommendations?
So there's probably a lot of things that they can do, but I'd say the top 3, right?
Okay.
The top 3 should definitely be, number 1, make sure you have all of those basic documents. Get that will, have that power of attorney, have that medical directive, and a trust if recommended. The second thing, we really just want to make sure that they understand and we educate them on the law, because having that knowledge really gives the clients an advantage. And I want to bring it back to, you get what you pay for. Don't go online and do those documents yourself, because there's so many little nuances where I sit with clients and they say to me, Kim, I never even thought of that until you mentioned it. So it's not as simple as just pulling a will offline and having it signed. You really want to get real deep into certain aspects and really educate yourself.
Well, I think that's the advantage of working with you and working with professionals, is because you have that expertise that you can guide them, because not everybody doesn't always know what they want. And sometimes it's that gray area in not knowing what you want where you need that clarification, and it opens up your thinking from that perspective.
For sure. I want to ask you, in your firm, in the Timothy Rice firm, your firm, are you just licensed in New Jersey? Because Joanne and I have clients in Pennsylvania, Delaware, New York, etc. Are you just in New Jersey?
Thank you for asking. So I am admitted in New York and New Jersey, and Mr. Rice is actually admitted in New Jersey and Pennsylvania. So
we got to get you in Florida too, because there's a lot of people in Florida. So we just have a moment or two, and I want to make sure that we give your contact information. So if you could just tell our viewers, your website, your phone number, etc.
Yep. So it's the Timothy Rice Estate and Elder Law Firm. A quick Google search or an internet search will be able to find us. We have locations in both Voorhees and in Freehold. So we do service central to southern New Jersey. And we're located, right here in Voorhees, only a few minutes away. And it's been great. And I really appreciate you both having me on.
Did a great job.
You
Thank
did a
you
great
so
job.
much.
But before we close, I just have to say their website is actually amazing. Did you go on it, Martin?
I'll have to go on it.
There is so much educational information in there, and that certainly doesn't preclude you. Read that and don't contact Kim. But it will be very eye-opening. So kudos to your marketing person, your marketing team.
They are fantastic.
That put that together, very current information about laws, and it's just very well done.
We have videos, we have free information, checklists, and we do encourage people to check out our website
Yeah,
before they even come on
absolutely.
come and meet with me, because they're giving themselves that education.
Yeah,
Well, before we
absolutely.
get yelled at,
Okay.
thank you for joining
Thank
the
you so
show.
much.
Yeah.
And we'll see you next time on It's Your Money,
Yes.
right?
Sooner than later.
Yes,
Kim.
thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.